At exactly 2:20 a.m., the Titanic slipped completely out of sight. In the darkness left behind, roughly 1,500 people were violently thrown into the freezing Atlantic. Floating nearby were 20 partially filled lifeboats. The people inside could easily hear the thousands of screams echoing across the water, but almost every single crew refused to turn around. They were paralyzed by a brutal reality of physics. If they stayed away, the people in the water would freeze to death. But if they rowed back into a desperate, panicking crowd, hundreds of hands would grab the sides, swamp the boat, and guarantee everyone drowned. This standoff created a deadly tactical gridlock. Saving anyone in the water required a calculated strategy that went directly against the immediate human instinct of self-preservation. Fifth Officer Harold Lowe understood that charging blindly into the wreckage was a death sentence. He needed a precise, logistical plan to break the gridlock. Blowing his whistle into the pitch black, Lowe ordered 3 nearby lifeboats, numbers 10, 12, and D, to navigate towards his own boat, number 14. Once they gathered, he had the crews tie all 4 vessels together with heavy ropes. Lashing them side by side created a stable mass, stopping the current from scattering the boats. With the boats linked, Lowe transferred every woman and child into the adjoining boats. This left his vessel completely empty, maneuverable, and ready for strong rowers. Then came the hardest command of the night. With an empty boat and a capable crew, Lowe told his men to wait. They sat in the dark, listening to the screams slowly fade, forcing themselves to hold position until the crowd thinned out enough to safely approach. It was an agonizing decision, but entirely deliberate. Lowe calculated that waiting for the frenzy to die down was the mathematical reality of survival. A delayed rescue was the only alternative to a failed one. Roughly 45 minutes went by. The deafening cries eventually faded into a terrible silence, and Lowe finally gave his crew the order to pull the oars. Lifeboat 14 pushed back into the center of the debris field. The crew shouted into the black void, navigating through a sea of frozen bodies, using a single, harsh flashlight to sweep the glassy surface of the water. Near the edge of the wreckage, the light caught a piece of white paint. It was a wooden door, blown off its hinges, and lying rigidly on top was a Chinese passenger named Fang Lang. When the crew pulled Lang aboard, his clothes were frozen directly to his skin. They wrapped him in heavy coats, expecting him to pass away, but the sudden movement of the boat jolted him awake. Without speaking, he grabbed an oar and started rowing with the crew, a sudden burst of physical exertion that generated enough body heat to keep him alive. A short distance away, the crew spotted 23-year-old Harold Fillmore. While others succumbed to the freezing temperatures within minutes, Fillmore had found a donut-shaped life buoy and wedged his upper torso firmly through the center, keeping his vital organs elevated out of the water. Both men managed to outlast the 45-minute delay through a combination of makeshift elevation and sheer physiological resilience, delaying extreme hypothermia just long enough for the sweep to find them. Dawn finally broke over the Atlantic, lifting the cover of darkness to reveal a vast, devastating debris field and the scattered remnants of the Titanic's fleet. Some survivors spent the entire night fighting a completely different battle. Lifeboat B had never been properly launched and was floating completely upside down, with 30 freezing men balancing dangerously on its slippery wooden hull. To keep the hull from rolling over in the ocean swells, Second Officer Charles Lightlore forced the survivors into rows. Every time a wave hit, he ordered the men to physically lean their collective weight against it, fighting the ocean hour after hour. Nearby, the passengers in Lifeboat A faced an entirely different nightmare. Their boat had landed upright, but was severely flooded. With no oars and no way to bail the water, the survivors spent the night standing knee-deep in the freezing ocean, several of them collapsing and dying exactly where they stood. As the morning light exposed their locations, the final rescues began. Lifeboats 4 and 12 carefully extracted the exhausted men balancing on Boat B, while Officer Lowe directed his crew to paddle toward the flooded survivors trapped in Boat A. Now heavily overloaded and riding low in the waves, the lifeboats began the slow, grueling journey toward the rescue ship, the Carpathia. Reaching sunrise required entirely different forms of organized endurance. Some groups survived by synchronizing their body weight against the waves, while others simply had to endure the freezing conditions until the scattered fleet could pull together. By 8:30 a.m., nearly 6 hours after the ship first disappeared beneath the water, the final lifeboat was emptied. The extreme physical and psychological toll of the elements was permanently etched into the faces of the survivors huddled on the decks. Out of the 1,500 people stranded in the water at 2:20 a.m., only 4 individuals were pulled out alive by the rescue sweep. Those final 4 men did not survive by sheer luck. They lived because they managed to elevate themselves out of the freezing water, and because one officer was willing to execute a brutal, calculated strategy to row back into the dark.